You're standing in line at the grocery store, scrolling mindlessly through your phone, when suddenly, there it is, a song, a scent, a random phrase that catapults them back into your consciousness, like an uninvited guest kicking down the door of your mental peace. And just like that, you're back in the labyrinth. Is this spiritual connection, or am I just obsessed? The twin flame journey isn't some neatly packaged love story with a guaranteed happy ending. It's more like being handed a mirror in a hall of mirrors. Suddenly, every fear, every unmet need, every hidden wound is reflected back at you with terrifying clarity. And the thoughts? Oh, they're relentless. They don't ask permission. They don't follow business hours. They show up like old friends who've overstayed their welcome, sprawled on your mental couch, eating all your snacks. But here's the question. When does thinking about them cross the line into chasing them? When does sacred connection become self-inflicted torture? That's what we're untangling here, not with fluffy spiritual bypassing, but with real talk about energy, psychology, and the messy, magnificent human experience of loving someone who feels like both home and hurricane. This isn't about shaming you for missing them. It's about empowering you to discern between the whispers of destiny and the screams of attachment. Because the difference between a twin flame and a toxic limbo isn't the intensity of your feelings. It's what you do with them. So let's ditch the guilt, drop the over-analysis, and get to the heart of why this connection haunts you and how to make peace with its ghost. Let's get real for a second. If thinking about your twin flame made you a chaser, then half the planet's spiritual seekers would be guilty of stalking their own souls. And that's ridiculous. You don't chase gravity, it just is. You don't pursue oxygen, you breathe it without thinking. So why do we pathologize the natural pull of a connection that, by its very nature, is supposed to defy logic? Here's the thing. Thinking about your twin flame is as involuntary as remembering your first heartbreak when a certain song plays. It's muscle memory of the soul. But chasing? That's when you start bargaining with the universe like a desperate Black Friday shopper. If I just text them one more time, maybe the divine will finally align our timelines. To be chu. Ever notice how the more you try not to think of something, the more it clings to your brain, like a pop song you hate but can't stop humming? That's your subconscious playing tricks on you. The twin flame connection thrives in that liminal space between memory and premonition. You're not just thinking of them, you're thinking with them in some weird cosmic conference call you never signed up for. But here's where it gets sticky. If your thoughts are laced with, why haven't they reached out? Or, what if they're with someone else? Congrats, you've entered the anxiety spin cycle. That's not love, that's your ego doing parkour off past wounds. Real connection doesn't need constant reassurance. It's like sitting by the ocean. You don't have to keep checking if the water's still there. Let's do a quick vibe check. When you think of them, does your chest feel like a sunlit meadow or a crime scene? Do you smile unconsciously, or does your stomach twist like you're waiting for exam results? The twin flame journey isn't about romanticizing agony. It's about recognizing when your soul connection is just your abandonment issues in a fancy trench coat. A mystic once told me, "You don't find your twin flame, you remember them." And memory doesn't demand proof. It doesn't need texts or signs or late-night DM stalking. It just knows. So if your thoughts are a peaceful hum rather than a blaring alarm, relax. You're not chasing. You're just existing in the same universe as them. And honestly, that's enough. At the end of the day, the only real difference between thinking and chasing is whether you're holding on or just letting the thought pass through like a cloud. One is a meditation. The other is a hostage situation. So next time you catch yourself wondering if you're too obsessed, ask yourself, am I trying to control the uncontrollable, or am I just a human with a heart that remembers too well? And if all else fails, remember, even monks get distracted. They just don't beat themselves up about it. Let's cut to the chase. If you've ever wondered whether thinking about your twin flame too much means you're spiraling into obsession, congratulations, you're officially human and possibly a little psychic. Because here's the kicker. Twin flames don't just cross paths, they haunt them. Like that one song you can't shake, except instead of a catchy chorus, it's a whole soul-level déjà vu that leaves you staring at your ceiling at 3 a.m. wondering, why does this feel like remembering, not just imagining? But here's where it gets messy. There's a fine line between I keep thinking about them because we share a cosmic Wi-Fi connection, and I keep thinking about them because I've turned them into my personal emotional slot machine. Pull the lever hard enough, maybe I'll hit the jackpot of reciprocation. One is spiritual resonance, the other is just your abandonment issues wearing a twin flame disguise. Ever notice how the more you try not to think about them, the louder their name echoes in your head? That's not coincidence. It's neurology and mysticism holding hands in the dark. Your brain's amygdala, the anxiety alarm, and your soul's memory, the we've done this before, déjà vu, are locked in a tug of war. One screams, danger, unresolved feelings ahead, while the other whispers, relax. You've known them for lifetimes. They're not lost, just orbiting. But let's get real. If your thoughts feel like a scratched record skipping on the same lyric, do they miss me? Are they with someone else? What if I messed it up? That's not twin flame telepathy. That's your inner child throwing a tantrum for closure. True twin flame energy doesn't need to obsess because it knows, the way you know your own reflection in the mirror. Obsession, that's just love's shadow, dressed up as destiny. Here's a quick way to check. When you think of them, does your body feel like it's plugged into a charger, warm, buzzing, alive, or like it's bracing for a punch, tight, nauseous, desperate? One is recognition, the other is projection. Twin flame thoughts should feel like coming home, not like waiting for a text back in a dead zone. You don't chase your twin flame, you recognize them, and recognition doesn't ache, it exhales. So if your mind keeps circling them like a shark around a shipwreck, ask yourself, am I tuning into the universe or just my own loneliness with a spiritual filter? At the end of the day, The difference between thinking and obsessing boils down to this. Does it feel like a prayer or a panic attack? One is communion. The other is just your ego playing solitaire with your heart. So next time you catch yourself spiraling, remember, even monks get distracted. The trick isn't to stop thinking about them. It's to stop worrying about why you can't. And if all else fails, try this mantra. If it's real, it doesn't need my anxiety to keep it alive. Now go eat a snack. You're overthinking again. So you're sitting there minding your business when suddenly, bam, their name flashes across your mind like a neon sign in the middle of nowhere. No trigger, no reason, just there, taking up space like an uninvited guest who somehow knows where you keep the good snacks. And the wild part? You're not even sure if it's you thinking about them or them thinking about you. Cue the existential spiral. Wait, whose thought is this anyway? You see, the connection doesn't play by the rules of your mind and their mind. It's more like you're both tuned into the same radio station. Sometimes you're the DJ, sometimes you're the listener, and sometimes the signal gets so tangled you can't tell whose voice is whose. Ever had a dream about them only to get a text the next morning? Or felt a sudden wave of emotion out of nowhere, only to realize later they were going through something big? That's not coincidence. That's the universe's version of a group chat you didn't consent to, but can't leave. You know how amputees sometimes still feel their missing limb? That's the closest analogy to the twin flame telepathy thing. Even when they're not physically there, it's like your nervous system hasn't gotten the memo. You'll catch yourself reaching for your phone to text them before remembering you're in no contact, or you'll hear a song and know they've been listening to it too. It's eerie, sure, but also weirdly comforting, like your souls are doing the Macarena in sync, while your 3D selves are still figuring out how to say hi without combusting. But here's where it gets tricky. Not every random thought is a psychic message. Sometimes a craving for pizza is just a craving for pizza, not a sign from your twin. The key is in the quality of the thought. Does it drop in like a lightning bolt? Clear, sudden, and charged with that unmistakable them energy? Or is it your brain running its usual late-night anxiety marathon fueled by leftover attachment and a dash of wishful thinking? One feels like a download. The other feels like spam. Let's play a game. Is this telepathy or just your imagination throwing a themed party? If you wake up at 4 a.m. to their voice in your head saying something specific, and later find out that they woke up at the same time thinking exactly the same thing, that's probably what telepathy is. If, however, you spend 3 hours creating the perfect Instagram story in case they look at your profile and then convince yourself that the universe made you do it, that sounds like imagination. See the difference? One is effortless, almost like overhearing a conversation you weren't meant to. The other? That's just your ego wearing a tinfoil hat and calling it divine guidance. At the end of the day, the twin flame connection is less about understanding the how and more about trusting the why. You don't question gravity when you trip. You just accept that it's doing its job. Same deal here. So next time you're stuck wondering, is this them or just me? Try this radical approach. Does it matter? If the thought brings peace, lean in. If it brings chaos, let it pass like a bad pop song on the radio. And if all else fails, remember, even psychic bonds have bad reception sometimes. Maybe they're just thinking about you because you're thinking about them. Let's get brutally honest. Thinking about your twin flame isn't the problem. It's what you do with those thoughts that turns you into either a Zen master or a walking anxiety meme. You know that scene in cartoons where the character runs off a cliff but doesn't fall until they look down? That's you right now, hovering mid-air, suddenly aware you've been mentally sprinting after someone who might not even be on the same damn mountain. The second you panic, splat. But here's the plot twist. You were never supposed to be chasing. You were meant to expand, like the universe itself, no longer orbiting them, but becoming your own goddamn galaxy. Ever jolt awake at stupid o'clock with their name burning behind your eyelids like a psychic spam call? Here's how to decode it. If the thought arrives crisp and clear, like a bell ringing in fog, no urgency, no ache, just knowing. Maybe you catch a whiff of their cologne in an empty room or hear their laugh in a crowd. It's soul-level ping. It's not yours to dissect. It's just the connection checking its own pulse. If, however, your brain's on a doom scroll through the what if archives, you're mentally drafting texts you'll never send, rehearsing arguments they'll never hear. Congrats, you're now both the screenwriter and sole audience of your own tragic rom-com. The difference? One leaves you with quiet awe, the other leaves you craving a Xanax and a time machine. The ancients believed lead could become gold. You're turning fixation into freedom. Try this. Next time they hijack your mental real estate, imagine plucking the thought like a ripe apple, examining it with detached curiosity. This one's spiked with fear, then tossing it into a river. Watch it drift. No judgment, no resistance, just observing how the current carries what you no longer need to clutch. Or, if you're feeling extra, assign them a mental room in your psyche's mansion. They get to stay, but they don't get to redecorate. Doors always open, but you control the thermostat. Here's the cosmic joke. The moment you stop demanding this connection, look a certain way, it starts feeling more real than ever. Not as a missing piece, but as a parallel reality, like hearing a familiar song through a neighbor's wall. You don't need to break down the door to know the music's still playing. So breathe. The thoughts aren't your enemy. The desperation is. And if all else fails, remember, even the moon doesn't chase the tide. They just move together, bound by something deeper than pursuit. Let's end this where we began, with you, standing at the crossroads of longing and liberation, wondering if your thoughts are a bridge or a barricade. Here's the truth you've been circling like a moth around a flame. Thinking about your twin flame doesn't make you a chaser. It makes you a witness to something ancient and unfinished. But obsession, That's just love's shadow, masquerading as devotion while quietly pickpocketing your peace. Imagine your connection as a river. You can kneel at its banks, cupping the water in your hands, watching it slip through your fingers, or you can dive in headfirst, fighting the current, convinced that if you just swim hard enough, you'll reach some imagined shore where everything finally makes sense. But rivers don't work that way. They flow where they're meant to, with or without your permission. The choice isn't between thinking and not thinking. It's between surrendering to the current or exhausting yourself trying to redirect it. There's a reason the most profound spiritual lessons often come wrapped in silence. Think of those Japanese pottery artists who fill cracks with gold, not to hide the breaks, but to honor them. Your twin flame's absence, or their maddening, mysterious presence, is just that, a fracture where the light gets in. Every unanswered text, every sleepless night spent replaying memories, every "why won't they just?" is an invitation to stop looking for answers out there and start finding them in the last place you'd think to search, your own unshakable center. Did you really believe the universe would dangle a soul-deep connection in front of you just to yank it away like some cosmic carrot on a stick? Or could it be that this ache is the chisel and you're the marble, being sculpted into something too vast to cling to old forms of love? Here's the secret they don't put in the spiritual brochures. Twin flames aren't about finding your other half. They're about realizing you were whole all along. It just took someone mirroring your brokenness back to you to make you see it. So the next time their name flickers across your mind like lightning, don't panic. Don't dissect it. Just nod like you would at a passing stranger who somehow knows your name. Ah, you again. This journey was never about them. It was always about you, the you that existed before this love, the you that's growing through it, the you that will outlast even the most seismic connections. So let the thoughts come, let them go, and when the missing feels like too much, remember, even the moon waxes and wanes, but it never apologizes for its phases. Neither should you. Now close this tab, go live. The best love stories aren't written in words. They're written in the unshakable quiet of a heart that finally learned to be its own home.